We're going to get started in just a couple of minutes. For those who do not know me, I am Chef Maxine. So I am the culinary food director at York Region Food Network. And before we get started and all that we are going to talk about today, we just want to start with a land acknowledgement. So we'll do that. I'll go over like the 2 housekeeping rules that we have. And then I'm so excited to introduce our guest chef today, Chef Suzanne Barr. So you guys are going to be like, you will not be disappointed from this. All right, so I'm just going to ask my colleague Dallin. He's going to be here helping on the back end. He's going to just do our land acknowledgements before we get started, and then I will hop in with our housekeeping, and then we're going to get started with Chef Suzanne.
Thanks, Maxine. Welcome, everybody. So just before we get started, we want to acknowledge where we're situated and also the people who've lived alongside this land for thousands of years before us and who continue to live here. Currently, we live and work on the traditional territories of the Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe peoples, and we're part of the Williams Treaties and Treaty 13. The Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation are the closest nation to where I live. They live about an hour north of where I am. As a settler, I'm extremely thankful for the generations of Indigenous communities who cared for and continue to care for the plants, waters, animals, and Mother Earth, who have allowed for life to thrive in this area and across Turtle Island. It's crucial to understand that these communities have been continually violently displaced as a result of colonialism and white supremacist genocidal actions that are ongoing, not only leading to generational impacts for the peoples, but also generational impacts for the planet. It's also vital to acknowledge the many people of African descent who are not settlers, but whose ancestors were forcibly displaced as part of the transatlantic slave trade. So as we move into our conversation today, I feel it's important for us to keep these truths in our minds and to think about the incredible knowledge, resiliency, creativity, and skills of Black and Indigenous communities. We should also be thinking about how we can move from acknowledging these truths into individual and collective actions in support of truth and reconciliation and Black liberation, things we all have a responsibility to work towards.
Thank you, Dallin. All right, so here we go. All right, so welcome, folks. So our housekeeping rules are super simple today. You can ask questions throughout our conversation. We just want to keep in mind that this is a respectful space. So ask your questions. You can type in the chat to do so, or if you raise your hand, there's not lots of us here today. So if you actually want to speak and ask a question, you can raise your hand and then I will call your name and then you can unmute to ask Suzanne whatever question that you would like to ask. Or if you're not comfortable doing that, you can actually just type in the chat. All right, so we are going to sort of explore all kinds of food, culture, traditions, heritage, and just being female in this industry. And so it's going to be a very exciting conversation. That's pretty much all of our housekeeping. So we're going to just keep it light. We're going to keep it fun, and we're going to have an awesome time in the kitchen. My only regret, as always, is that Chef Suzanne is not in my personal space so that I can eat her food. I guess you guys will be there too. But hopefully soon we're going to be able to do that. So on that note, I just want to say hello and welcome. This is Food Stories, folks. So Food Stories is exactly what it sounds like. It's just a way for us to share and learn about culture, traditions, and cuisines with a focus on BIPOC influenced chef and peoples. And so today, we are so excited to have Chef Suzanne Barr in our space. Like, I can't tell you how excited I have been. And I'm so grateful that Suzanne so graciously agreed to come and talk about her personal journey. For those of you who do not know, Chef Suzanne is a restaurateur. She's laid the foundations for very influential restaurants in the city of Toronto. She is an author. She is a community social activist promoting Black communities, as well as women and folks within the LGBTQ communities. She is a mom, a mama, and just an awesome human. And so, Suzanne, I'm just going to say welcome. And we're so glad to have you here today.
Well, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. You know, I want to acknowledge the land that I'm standing on myself. So for those that don't know, I'm actually currently not in Toronto as we speak. I'm actually in Florida, where I grew up, but I am Canadian by birth. But I'm here doing a secret project. But more details are going to be shared throughout tonight. I look forward to being able to talk about what I am working on. But the land that I am currently standing on is actually Seminole lands. And I give thanks for being on this land and acknowledge the communities that have been living here far longer than my community and my people. I too am from Indigenous lands in Jamaica, but it is an honor and a privilege to be standing on this land today with you, cooking a traditional meal that means so much to me because it's literally from my own backyard in about 2 minutes from where I'm currently standing. So it's a very special evening, a conversation about food, history, culture, and love, truly.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm so excited about your meal that you're preparing. So I gave them a little teaser and I let them kind of know, but maybe would you like to share with us what you're preparing for us today and why you chose those specific recipes?
Yeah, you know, I wasn't really sure what to make. You know, I recognize the fact that I am in a different location and I wanted to, you know, make sure that whatever I was making, I was being true to what was growing here, what is actively growing and what I had quick access to. And I couldn't think of anything better than to make a traditional, one of the staple West Indian Jamaican dishes, ackee and saltfish. This is like the gateway of understanding, much like patties are, much like jerk chicken and fried chicken, but this truly for me is a gateway to understanding how unique, how special, how powerful the food from Jamaica is. Originating this particular plant, fruit, coming from West Africa and how it got to Jamaica and how it has been able to keep up the tradition, continue to feed the many people that love it, and to, you know, truly still have a conversation about how unique and strange but weird fruit it is, but how beautiful and fragrant and delicious it is. So we're making ackee and saltfish, and we're also making a very traditional dish that is kind of a side dish that you traditionally have with fish. It's called Bammy. So Bammy is a gluten-free puck, I want to say, because that's traditionally how you would have it, circular in shape, and then you cut that into quarters, and then you eat that with a piece of fish. And it's something that you have, most days in Jamaica are hot, so you want to have something that's a little starchy, but also that just pairs perfectly and soaks up that oil, and the saltiness is just like, and the juices from the fish all work so well. So we're making Bammy, and we're also making ackee and saltfish.
Amazing. Now, so for those of us who don't know what ackee is, I don't know if there's folks here who have never heard of, I think ackee and saltfish is Jamaica's like national dish. So for those of us who don't know it or who've only seen it in the can, which is something that I've only seen, can you talk a little bit about it and maybe show us what it is?
Yeah, absolutely. So this morning I was on the mission to get to my dad's house because the one thing you have to remember with ackee is it grows on a tree. So ackee is actually a fruit. So you'll see it on the tree hanging like that. And it'll be attached to a stem and it'll be hanging down. And as over time, over days, what happens is these three little intersectors, they open. This is one of the most dangerous fruits on the planet. So much so you have to allow nature to do its job. And what I mean by that is you have to allow nature to basically open and release the gases that are within the ackee. They need to be released on their own to then begin to open. So this is not a fully open, but this is, I would continue to let this just open on its own, and it will continue to do that. And what will happen is basically you'll end up with a black seed, as you guys can see. That seed there is what holds the fleshy part of the fruit. So this is the actual flesh. So you've got in one pod or one of these Ackees, you will have a total of 3 Ackee hearts, as I like to call them, because they look like the heart. And that's why we said we're making love today. And the black seed would sit here right on top. And then you would basically, you're removing the black seed, you're cleaning out some of the guts from the heart, and then you have the raw Ackee. This is better enjoyed when you've either steamed it or when you've added it to your dish with your seasoning. So that's your thyme and your onions and your garlic and your tomatoes, whatever it might be. Ackee is a vegan dish. Ackee is a vegetarian dish. Ackee is gluten-free. Ackee is delicious. It looks like eggs. A lot of people say, if you've never had it before, think that you might be eating eggs. I don't like to say that. I like to tell you what it is. To me, it almost tastes a little bit more like avocado, because it really kind of picks up the flavoring in the pan. So that salted cod, the fresh thyme, the fresh Scotch bonnet, the onions, the garlic, all of that mixed together, that's what makes it so flavorful. But it's creamy, it's smooth, it's delicious. It is our national dish in Jamaica. And it's something that I have had the chance my whole life, since I was like probably 7 years old. I've been opening, cleaning, and prepping Ackee. So much so that it's like a conversation that I have with my sister, like, remember the days when we used to have to get the Ackee from the tree? Have to do this, and to see it still growing. And just recently, my son and I, we were out there picking Ackee off the tree together. And that's something that, I was almost crying because it meant so much to me, because it was my tradition that I did with my mom. And, if we didn't have it on the tree, then my dad friend would give us some, and then we would be sitting at the table, cleaning it and prepping it and getting ready to enjoy it on Sunday. Traditionally, you would have Ackee for breakfast, but I think now you can really have Ackee any time of the day. Like it's a treat. It's truly a treat. And a lot of times you won't see this. It's really, really challenging to get fresh Ackee. So when you can embrace it, enjoy it, invite people over, and have a whole feast. I wish you guys were with me, because I would just share a little.
We are all feeling the exact same way, Suzanne, for sure. I have a question for you. So does Ackee ripen off of the tree like other fruits would?
It can both ways. So you can leave it on the tree, and why I was saying that you kind of got to act quick, because what animal loves Ackee are squirrels. So they run, or any critters, they run for the Ackee. So it can and it will open like so on the tree, actually on the stem. And then basically you're using this kind of concoction to like pull it down, very similar to what you would use to grab a coconut, but it's a smaller neck and a smaller mouth. And so as it opens up, my dad, sometimes what happens is, as he's pulling one, 2 might fall that look like this, and then he puts it on the windowsill outside, and then over a couple days it basically opens up, and then you've got your open Ackee that you're now safe to clean and eat and enjoy.
Amazing.
Because we don't always get Ackee, and there was almost I think I want to say in the 80s, there was a ban of Ackee in America. And that was because people didn't understand how it was so deadly. So people were dying because they were finding the ponds and they were opening them. They were like, yeah, we got Ackee. And then they were sick, and unfortunately they passed away. So there was a ban on it. And also it's become like this, almost like this black market item. Like you're like, yo, you got the Ackee Connect, Oxtail Connect. Like when you got an Oxtail Connect, you're like, yo, I got the Oxtail Connect. But Ackee Connect is still something that people, it's like when my dad's tree is full and ready, like it is now, you see the phone buzzing quickly because the people are like, yo, I know the Ackee's ready. Can I come through? But keep in mind, in North America, we can also get Ackee in a can. And what has happened is basically it's been processed, it's been cleaned, and then it's preserved, and then it's packed in a can. It's traditionally anywhere between $9 to sometimes $13. You can buy it at most Jamaican most Jamaican shops or even West Indian shops. But it is on the pricier side. But like I said, again, find that Ackee Connect and you're good.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's going to be more challenging here in Canada, but understandably, if you only get 3 pieces like per fruit, it's understandable why it would be so expensive.
Yeah, truly.
Yeah.
I mean, labor, it's like the tree itself, what we found on my dad's property is that it doesn't bloom. Like last year, it bloomed okay, but this year the tree has never been as full. So keep that in mind, like if you're seeing fields of Ackee, like it's the labor. It's kind of like grapes. You're paying a higher price point for something that's hand, hand weighted. It's picked. It's because you cannot do this with a machine. You have to do it by hand, because if you don't do it by hand, you can break, and basically you don't want to mash it up. Yeah. Something happens already in the can, so you have to be gentle with it. You have to be time with it. It's a slow tradition. It's a slow producing fruit, slow producing tree. So it makes sense why you're going to pay a heftier price point. But again, it's definitely one of my favorite dishes. And I look forward anytime I can make it and I can enjoy it.
Well, you've totally enticed us now completely. So I'm really excited for you to take us through making this traditional dish of Jamaica. And we're excited that this is something you chose to share with us.
Yeah. So, okay. So we've, the Ackee itself has already been cleaned. What my dad did already is he blanched the Ackee. So it's already a little softened. You can go with the raw, and you just make sure you just cook it out a little bit more in the pan, but he blanched it just to kind of get off just a little bit of that slime that sometimes is on there. So the Ackee is prepped, and then also saltfish is the key to Ackee and saltfish. So as we all might know what bacalao or salted cod, this is what I'm talking about. So salted cod has an incredible tradition and a background story to Canada. And if anybody does know that background story, please, jump in and let us know what you know, or if you have a story, a connection to salted cod, or have even a bit of background information around salted cod. But I had the opportunity to speak on a panel about how salted cod, how it came from Nova Scotia, East Coast, and made its way down to Jamaica, and how it became, like, for us, one of our main staples when cooking and when seasoning, because it's not just for the flesh that we wanted, we also want the flavoring of the salt. So, like, for example, when I'm making Ackee and saltfish, I traditionally don't add any salt. And that's because when I have salted cod, which you can purchase at anywhere from Bravo to Loblaws, you can really get it anywhere. You can buy it from the Portuguese markets, you can buy it in the Caribbean markets, you can buy it in any market nowadays. I soak it overnight. And so I'll take a little piece of it, a fillet, maybe about a half a pound. I'll soak it overnight, covered in water, just tap water, not cold, not hot. And I place it into the fridge, or I leave it on my counter covered. In the morning, I drain that off. And traditionally, I would just do a single boil. Now, a single boil is only going to get some of that salt released out of the flesh of the fish, but of the fillet. But it's also, for me, the best way, so I don't have to add more salt to it, because everything else is just going to just work so balanced so well together. You want to taste the salted cod. That's the whole point of it. You can do boil in the way that when we say a second boil is you bring it, so you start with cold water in a pot. Your salted cod that was soaked overnight goes into your pot, cover that, turn it on high, let it come to a full boil, but wait, don't make sure it doesn't boil over because it's a mess. And then there, you're basically throwing off all that excess water, and then you're refilling it with fresh water and you're boiling it again. So that's a second boil. So that's 2 boils you might want to do, 3 boils, depending on how big of a fillet you're using, is how many boils you feel that you need. And just taste it. You know, it's cooked. The salt cooked it, right? So it's cod, it's the same cod that we'd find anywhere in East Coast Canada that's been salted and preserved. And this, for me, is such an important ingredient because it's part of what for most Caribbean countries is, because of the climate, we had to use so many preservation techniques to really be able to make our food come alive. And salted cod was just another added beautiful preserved way of handling fish that we then finessed and found different ways. You'll see salted cod with ackee, you'll see salted cod with callaloo, which is a leafy green. You'll see salted cod with cabbage. You'll see salted cod with pretty much anything. Yeah. Salted cod, main ingredient and used in so many different dishes in Jamaican foods, but it definitely has found, you know, a big part of, you know, why this dish is such our national dish of Jamaica. So I've got the salted cod. So after I boiled it, that first boil, I let it cool down. I took a fork and I flaked it, because you want to basically really want to taste, every bite should have a little bit of salted cod. So you want to break it up into little morsels and little bite size, and then put it off to the side. So for me, how I like to make my ackee and saltfish, I like my 3 main repertoire ingredients: my tomato, garlic, and onion. That's what I loved. I need that. And then for my aromatics, I've got my Scotch bonnet. I don't open it because I have people in my house that don't like pepper and they don't have pepper. So I'm mindful of that. And definitely I add in some fresh thyme. But the beauty of the Scotch bonnet, what that does, it really gives a little bit of heat, but more than anything, it's the oils, the essential oils from that pepper that get released that make it so beautiful and blooms so perfectly with the ackee, saltfish, and everything else. All right.
That combination, Suzanne, that combination of that onion, garlic, hot pepper, and tomato is like the base for so many different cultural cuisines. It's that foundation. Yeah.
Yeah. It's truly, I mean, like I was speaking with a friend of mine, her dad is from Costa Rica the other night, and he was like, you know, I'm really bored with the way that I make my fish because I just basically do garlic, onion, peppers. I'm like, you make a sofrito, that's the most beautiful. That's the best way to start any dish. I'm like, I do the same. And he was like, oh, you do? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, what about just butter? I'm like, yeah, you can do that too, but keep with the sofrito. Like, it's beautiful. It's such a, it's part of why our food speaks so loud to us as people, and us bringing those traditions to this country, and people continuing to do it, and trying to understand a bit more of why our food is so delicious and you need to have it. There it is. Here are the ingredients. I am going to ask everyone to take out your passport. We're going to travel over to my stovetop, and we're going to get these ingredients in a pan, saute them up with a little bit of oil in the pan, and we're going to have a delicious dish happening in the pan. So, all right, so let's move you guys over.
All right, let's do it.
How is everybody doing?
Yeah, so if anyone has any questions, it could be about the dish, it could just be about Suzanne. We're going to dive a little bit more and learn about Suzanne herself just shortly. But in the meantime, if you have any questions, please feel free to add. If this is the first time you're even seeing this dish prepared, let us know. If you've made it before and you have your own little twist, we love to hear what everyone's variations are as well. So yeah, hop in the chat. You can ask any questions you want, or even salt cod. Yeah, so Suzanne was talking about salt cod and how that's one of the main ingredients that you find in this dish. And you'll find it used all throughout the Caribbean. So I'm just curious to know, does anyone else who's here with us today, do you use salt cod in your culture? And if so, how do you use it?
It's a great question. You know, I feel like so many cultures have their very particular style and dish and their way of how they want to handle it. It's so fascinating to me when I did that conversation, and to learn a bit more of why it was, how it got on that boat, how it made its way to Jamaica, and how it's still such a staple, but how it made it to Portugal, and how it's such a staple in Spanish cooking, how it's such a staple in anything from that region. So I'm just smelling amazing smells of onions right now. I know everybody can imagine because we've all sauteed, you know.
Definitely something we've all done. So for those of you who don't know, so Suzanne, what she's talking about was this really great presentation that was held by Community Food Centers Canada, and it was called Get Salty. So I like the name for many reasons. And but what it was, they were talking about, so there was a chef from Newfoundland, there was a chef, was there a chef from Portugal? And I know Suzanne was there representing the Caribbean.
No, it was just myself and Todd Perrin.
Right. So there was the two of them, and they just kind of did this contrast. Whereas it's Todd, you said? Chef Todd?
Yeah, Chef Todd Perrin. He's from Prince Edward Island.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and Chef Todd was talking about how for their culture, it was just like survival. Like the food was just so that we can be alive. In the cold climate, not a lot of things grow, and they needed things that were sustaining. And so that was, you know, more the reason why that food existed. And then Suzanne shared her experience with saltfish and how it was used in Jamaican culture.
Yeah, and the great thing is that we had the moderator. She had actually, her name is B. One second, just grabbing my aromatics. B. Ackee. Her actual connection being a Jamaican background, but she wrote a full piece about salted cod and how it was so important in her life. And much like learning about why they were eating it in Nova Scotia is very similar to why we were eating it in Jamaica, why when it was on the boats and how people were able to sustain and keep up, that salt was an aid to help to, you know, you're out in the heat, you're working in the field, you're doing whatever is necessary. And so, you know, food becomes not just like this desire to have yummy foods, but it becomes a means of survival, much like what Todd was sharing with us. So, you know, the whole conversation all started from B's story that she wrote, and how CFCC, Community Food Center Canada, they were so moved by it, and it really was captivating, and it was just interesting to hear her take on it. But it was even more interesting to be able to have our background relationship, our connection to salted cod, sharing our story, because, you know, as restaurateurs, as chefs, we're in the business to be, you know, sharing our stories. We're in the business to not just make yummy food, but into having relationships with people. And that so much of that has to do with how we have conversations and how we tell stories. And we tell stories on the plate, in the pan. And so remembering that is something I always fall back on. If I'm feeling a little stressed and service is going on, or if I don't know what to make, I think to myself, where is my heart connecting with? What is really driving me to want to have something? And do I have all of the ingredients? And if I don't, can I be creative and make something still come together?
So that speaks a lot. So to kind of like, what does food mean to you? And I know that you have also been dubbed the queen of comfort food. I like that. I like that that nickname that you've been given. So I just wanted to know, like, if you could speak to that. Like, what does food mean to you, and how did you even get this nickname added to who you are as a part of who you are?
First of all, I don't know how it got to me. I was like uncertain if I actually loved it. I was like, well, yeah, I mean, aren't we all in love with comfort food? But all right, you know, sure. But I think a lot of that had to do with my time and my creations and my team over at Saturday Dinette. You know, we worked really hard in creating moments and memories on the plate that was all about Southern comfort. That was all about eating food that was like together. We were a small restaurant. First we had 20 seats, or no, 18 seats. Then we went from 18 to 26. And then somehow we got to 30. I don't even know how that happened, but we did. And so a lot of what myself and my staff, what we focused on was how do we keep it interesting? It was always seasonally driven, and it was always sourced so honestly. We were working with vendors like 100 kilometers. We were working with local farmers. We were working with Black farmers. We were working with whomever we could get access to. And anything that we could really, reflect back to why did we come up with this dish? I dream a lot about food, not just because I love it, but because like I have visions and I have ideas. And I remember one particular dish was called, it came to me and it was all white and it was like something was falling from the sky. And I connected that to, maybe creating a winter dish. And we made a winter dish called white rice. And it was basically a salted cod dish with sushi rice, salted cod, shallots, crispy onions, and it was then dusted and covered in like this Parmesan cheese that was right on top. And, I was unsure if people would really get it, but it connected to so many people, particularly folks that were coming from the Portugal area. They were like, this is like such a dish. This reminds me of this dish that I had, and that's the key. Yeah. Then we done our job. Then we know we're on the right track. And that's what kind of keeps us going. And that's why we love what we do. And we don't think second guess, like, is this good? No, it is. It's great. It's great. And folks love it. And we can keep going and keep doing it. I'm going to grab the salted cod and the ackee. So let me stop for give you guys a little update. So in the pan, I've had the tomatoes, the garlic, I had my sofrito going with my Scotch bonnet, my thyme. It's nice and cooked down, nice and softened. Now I'm going to add in my salted cod, okay? And then I'm just going to, it's probably about a half a pound, not too much. The tomatoes cooked down, the onions cooked down. And this serving will probably be a good portion for about 4 people. And in regards to the ackee, I don't know how much ackee that was, roughly like how many pods, but I knew it was probably about 3 cups of ackee if we measured it just with our measuring cups. So I've got my salted cod here. Now you can literally stop here and this could be your dish. Yeah. But what makes it so great is now bringing in the most important element, and that is the ackee. The ackee has a little bit of residual water in there. So that's just gonna now steam everything, blend everything. I'm gonna finish it off with some black pepper, and I'll taste it for seasonings, making sure that everything is just right. And then I'll garnish it with a little bit of scallion. And I also have a little bit of shadow benny. And I don't know if everyone knows about shadow benny. Shadow benny it looks very similar to culantro, which is and I'll show you guys. It's like the saw. It looks like almost a saw on the side, flat cilantro. And you'll find this in a lot of Latin American countries, but in the West Indies, particularly in Trinidad, this is called shadow benny. It's so aromatic, so beautiful. It's something that I love to kind of sneak in there. And it adds and brings a little bit more flavor. It's, and it just kind of just takes it to where it needs to go. So now at this point, because everything is cooked, you really want to be careful to not overmix it, because you don't want to break up the actual hearts. You want to keep the hearts still pretty whole and together. And I'm just going to turn my temperature down just a bit. So this whole time I've cooked it around like a medium temp, and I've got everything in here. I've got the bubbling from the water left over from the ackee. The salted cod's really blending well. You smell it all the time, the Scotch bonnet. And I'm now going to chop up some shadow benny and some scallion. top that with some black pepper, and we're complete. And then we can move on to the next dish.
That's amazing. I have a few comments here, Suzanne, I'd like to share with you.
Sure.
So Dallin's just saying that he loves the viewpoints on chef and the relationship with food and people. So he's appreciating that. Marissa's really enjoying your description of the foods that you're talking about, and specifically the dish, the what did you call it? White rice dish that you were speaking about.
Yeah.
And then I have a comment from Belle, and she's saying that she's 11 years old and she wants to own her own restaurant one day. And she said, I like what you just said about keeping it interesting and to use the local ingredients from farmers. And then she included a little acronym, and I feel like I am too old to know what that means. So if anyone can help me out, she said AYO. So I don't even know if I'm saying that right, but that was the last little comment.
Oh, wow. Thank you for all of those comments, folks. You know, it's really, truly a pleasure to talk about food in this way. You know, not just because I do it, you know, on so many occasions, whether it's with friends or talking about it on a cast or on a show or something like that. I think it's important to be able to, because you guys can't smell this, you guys can't taste this, but I want you to understand the intention behind it. And I think that's coming across pretty strong. And I think you guys also can relate because the ingredients are somewhat familiar, but maybe they are a little different. But I think the most important thing about talking about food is making sure that you're making something that is personal. I can talk till I'm blue in the face about something that I love and something that I've been eating my whole life. You know, if I was here talking to you about pasta, I can talk it to death, but pasta to me also has like a bit of a disconnect because I didn't grow up eating it. And it's something that I love and I appreciate and my son loves, but it's not like the love that I have for Ackee and Saltfish. This is something that, you know, just brought my family together. This brought us together to the table to work together, to build together. You know, TV was off. It was time to clean Ackee. It was time to sit, just listen, and to laugh, and my sister and I to complain a little bit about not wanting to do the work and wanting to get back to the TV. But when we knew that we were going to have Ackee the next morning, we were like, all right, everyone, this is great.
Suzanne, I have a couple more. Okay, so now I feel really silly, but basically Belle is actually Ayo. So it wasn't a slang that I wasn't down with. It was just actually, she was just saying that was her name. So I feel silly, but that's okay. Sometimes it happens. And I have a question. So Jung is just asking if is there another fruit that can be used like Ackee, like Logan or lychee?
Oh, that's a great question. You know, it's kind of earlier when I had mentioned to you guys about, you know, people always say that Ackee reminds them of scrambled eggs. And I was like, I don't know about that. I would say more avocado. It's the same thing, like in the sense that people don't think that you can cook with avocado, that you could, you know, actually saute it and put it in a dish. I would say maybe handling an avocado. You know, the wonderful thing about this being a fruit is that you automatically think like, yeah, you just want to eat it, you know, like sweet, it's juicy. Actually, it's not it's exactly like an avocado, like truly. But the way that you handle it and the way that you accompany it and flavor it is all up to you. It's all up to your discretion. So if you want to make something to kind of mimic something, think about all of the ingredients, think about all the mirepoix, the aromatics that you're going to use to make it come together, and then give it a try. I always say, make it your way, own it. You know, experimenting in the kitchen and not being afraid to try something is the key. That's the only way you're going to learn and understand why that dish has so much flavor and how you maybe are connecting with it. And it's also just a self-expression. You know, if you can't self-express in the kitchen, then why would anybody want to be eating? You know, why would anybody want to be up in there? Clearly, it's out of necessity. I get that. But it's even more beautiful when you're doing it with folks, when you're doing it with family, when you're doing it with intention, when you're doing it
with the insight that I'm creating something from nothing, and I'm excited to see where it's going to take me. You know, smells and notes and moments are going to hit you to the point where you're like, I had a deja vu. That took me back here. And so that for me is why I love cooking so much, because it's always different. It's never the same.
No.
Even if I dish 100 times, this version has come out different than when I made it on Sunday for my birthday.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of food, because you can really make it your own, like you were saying, and you can really transform it into so many different things once you kind of understand what each element is doing and what role it plays in a dish. Then it's like really it's open from there, and we can really explore with it.
Absolutely. You know, it's like, I'm not an expert in ackee and saltfish, but what I am an expert in is being able to try to mimic those flavors together using the ingredients, because keep in mind, like, I'm adding cilantro, I'm adding shadow bunny today, I'm adding scallion. You know, next time I might not have those ingredients, but I'm going to try to mimic it. My mom used to add bacon. She used to fry the bacon.
Oh yeah.
Add the salted cod to the bacon. Then she used to add the tomatoes. Then she used to add everything. Now then, really, like, she was a chef. Like, my mom could get down with making ackee. She knew exactly how she wanted it to come about. Yes to bacon.
Yeah, I'm telling you, you put bacon in just about anything, and it's like it becomes magical. I 100% agree with Mom on that.
Exactly. You know, and the great thing about this dish is that you can omit the bacon, you can omit the salted cod, and you can still come up with a really, really beautiful dish that has all of the elements of a beautiful vegetarian dish. So keep that in mind whenever you see a can. Trust me, you will see a can of ackee. I challenge everyone that's with us tonight to pick it up and try to challenge you to make it your way and make it taste delicious. Take a picture and send it to us, okay?
Yes. We love when you all do that. We love that. So
right.
I mean, for those of you, look at our Ackee and Saltfish. It looks amazing. And so currently, so Suzanne has left us in Toronto. While she was here, she had some groundbreaking restaurants in the city. She made mention of Saturday Dinette, which was Gerard Street, I believe.
Yeah, right in the heart of Riverdale, Leslieville.
Yeah. And then most recently, True Diner. Did you want to tell us a little bit about these restaurant adventures, what the food was like, and sort of what your vision was in creating them?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I didn't know if I was going to ever open a restaurant. You know, when I say we, myself and my husband, but at the time it was just my boyfriend, and then we ended up settling in Toronto, and we started a very small catering company. And from there, we being in that Leslieville area, we saw so many empty buildings. And one day we were just like driving past, and we saw this one building that was up for lease. And we were like, yeah, that's a corner space. Like, the idea of having a corner space that had all of the perfect elements to make it a diner, we were like, oh man, this is like a perfect spot. We made the call. We took about 4 months to renovate the whole space, 4 or 5 months to renovate the space. And then we opened it in September of 2014. And that was probably the most scariest thing I've ever done in my life, because, you know, yes, I had worked as a private chef. Yes, I had cooked in kitchens, but I hadn't owned and operated and run a business where I had staff and I had team and I had expectations, and I had to put bums in seats, and I had to like cook over and over again. And, you know, it took us a moment to kind of find our rhythm, but eventually when we did, it was locked, it was set, it was in place. But, you know, with every restaurant from Saturday Dinette to True, the intention was really about making sure that we did not just see our staff as staff. We saw them as family, but more than anything else, that we saw them as our team, and we saw all of us collectively working together.
Mm-hmm.
I can offer and share to you is as much as I knew they would be able to share and give to me, because I was new to Toronto, and I didn't know a lot, and I didn't know a lot of people. But what I got exposed to, what I was able to experience, was something that opened up so many opportunities and doorways, and I couldn't have done it without on my own. I couldn't have done it without my staff, without my team, without my husband, without my son. All of the elements that what made Saturday Dinette so special, and True True Diner. True True was, we had closed our doors at Saturday Dinette due to unfortunate relationships with our landlords, and we opened up. It took a while before we opened up another restaurant, but True True was still sticking to our love of the idea and concept of diners and what diners mean. I was born in Canada, but grew up in the US, grew up in the South, in South Florida, and understanding the history of what the civil rights movement meant and the impact it had on my life while growing up in the US. And so that, to me, Southern food to me, and its connection to how food got transported transatlantic, by way of coming off of ships, by way of having Caribbean chefs, Haitian chefs, Latin American chefs in kitchens, and how all of these cooks and chefs in the kitchens, and how they really dictate what we're eating. And that's what dictated what I wanted to talk about with food. It was like, it wasn't just a one particular, type of cuisine, but it was food that was about the world. It was about, and when you think about diners, it always brought people together. It was staple foods. It was simple foods. It was comfort food. And, that is where that name came from. That is what Saturday Dinette was known for doing. And that's what True True was attempting to do within a new space. And, we hired folks that were newcomers. We hired folks that were through agencies that, weren't the traditional means of hiring, but we wanted to give folks the experience from the ground up. We trained everybody from scratch. Few people had some experience, but everybody came into that kitchen with not knowing how to hold a knife. And so that, to me, was a pride of, connecting myself to becoming a teacher, becoming a mentor, becoming also a student in my own space again. And I think it's important as chef, we're never as good, we're never as good as we think we are until we actually find a real challenge. And that was a major challenge for me, because and I had been out of the kitchen, but I hadn't been in my own kitchen again, and it had been a while. And I wanted to really do this differently. And I wanted to embrace the biases that we see in kitchens, the microaggressions that we see in kitchens, the kitchens that we do deal with. And I wanted to trump all of that. And I wanted to take it head on. And we did that. And we did that with an incredible team. And we did that together. COVID came and went and took that opportunity away from myself and our team. And it was pretty bittersweet, but it's given us such a new look, an outlook on life. And it's also given me a new outlook on what's in the future for me. And so me and my family, we picked up and we made the journey back home here. A lot of it had to do with my dad still living here and just wanting to be able to be a bit closer to him, and understanding that COVID shut everything for everyone down. And, it put me in the position where I had to slow down as a chef, as a cook, as anyone that knows. We couldn't leave. We couldn't do anything. I had to sit in the fears and some of the stresses and some of the moments that I never allowed myself to, because I was like, no, I'm not sitting in that. I need to get up. I got to get going. I'm busy. I got to be busy. But I had to sit in it. I had to look. I had to reflect. And that shit was scary. But it's the best thing I could have done for myself and for anyone that was around me, truly.
Yeah. I mean, it's a big taking on that sort of restaurant mentorship leadership role. It's a really big responsibility. Personally, what I've found in my experience, I've been cooking for 22 years, and what I found is that my learning only began when I started cooking with others who had no experience and who were from different cultures. All of a sudden, it's like the world just blew open. and I saw technique and skill, and just like ability and flavors. And it was really a wonderful opportunity to look and to see, like we were just saying, you just made a sofrito, right? So that, you know, we think, oh, that's like Spanish, but it's also West African, right? And it's also Brazilian. Like, so we have this commonality, and it was really interesting to start to see these commonalities within the culture, which then sort of gave permission to celebrate those things. Because traditionally we learn food through this very Eurocentric perspective, especially if you go to culinary school, right? But I'm telling you, education did not start until you start cooking with others and females. So we know historically females have often been like the core of many cultures and cuisines when it comes to the kitchen. But then for some reason, well, we know it's like a struggle for us to even find a voice or a space. And I know that that's something that you've experienced. Before we get on to Bammy, did you just want to maybe speak a minute to that, and then we can hop into making our Bammy?
No, you're good. Ackee is ready to go. Everybody, you know, please take a peek at this, screenshot that. We've got our scotch still whole intact. If you dare, you can, I would break it open and I would kind of put some on the side. That's why I leave it whole, because at the end of the day, I typically would eat that. My husband does not eat that. All right, we're gonna go back. We're gonna get all of our ingredients for Bammy, and I absolutely want to jump into that part of the conversation because, yes, I have a lot to say about that. And just speaking, just one more thing, just about understanding that cooking didn't start until I started, taking myself out of that sense of comfort of what I learned in culinary school and what I thought was, what I needed to know, because that's the only way that you can get a job and that's the only kitchen that you can cook in, and realizing very quickly that those aren't the folks that are even in the kitchens cooking the food. This French background, this, very Eurocentric background of teaching and even recipe writing, it's gotten lost. It takes you so far away from that connection to, well, how did that ackee fruit get to where it actually is and how it connected to me? Mm-hmm. Those, how that sofrito it found a home in Brazil, how it found a home in Africa, how it found a home in Asia. Like you look at Korean food, you look at foods around the world, and those influences and those notes, they may not be called what you think, but they're called something else. And the flavor and the intention and why it's being added is the same intention and reason why we add it in our traditional dishes. So I think we should get started on Bammy. We're at 7:30, and I feel like these folks, they have beautiful things to talk about, but they didn't finish cooking. All right. Yeah, so truly something to marvel at. It's this beautiful, strange fruit, but that has so much history. If you ever get a chance, please, please, please grab it. All right. So Bammy. Bammy is all about this tuberous root that we all know and love. Cassava, yuca, and the other name that I just read about was minoca, I think it's called. It is by far probably the toughest root vegetable that I will work with, or I've had the chance to work with, outside of like acorn squash, or kombucha squash, or breadfruit when it's super young. But it's because of that skin, that outer skin has the wax on it. And that wax is really what we got to get through in order to be able to get to the most special part of this beautiful tuberous vegetable, which is the white flesh. So this particular dish, like I said, is indigenous to an area of Jamaica that my mom is actually from, and that is an area called St. Elizabeth. At least that's what I was told. I think every culture, as we're sharing about sofrito, it's the universal. It's a universal fruit, vegetable starch that everyone has had or uses, whether it's in a slaw, whether it's fried, whether it's boiled, whether it's grated, whether it's
You know, it's used and it's crafted in such a way that makes each dish and how you use it so special and so unique. So today we are going to peel it, we are going to grate it on the box grater, and then we're going to remove all the excess liquid, and then we're going to flavor it with a few spices that I thought would really make this quite special and unique for me. And then we're going to talk about how that, for me, this particular root and how this, you know, my first experience in having Bammy was a child, but it was also when I went back to Jamaica with my mom. So Maxine, I'll let you kind of jump in while I'm going to start taking my knife to this.
Yeah. Yeah, cassava. I always say it's like 6 degrees of separation with cassava. I can't, like most countries, a lot of countries use cassava. I believe, actually, I'm not. I believe it's actually native to Brazil.
Oh, is it?
And it's native to Brazil, and then it's like through the slave trade and trade routes, it moved to different regions of the world. So you can find it throughout the continent of Africa. You can find it like in Brazil. You can find it all throughout the Caribbean. So it's like in many different spaces.
Yep.
So yeah, it's called cassava. I had someone asking. So cassava, or the other name is yuca. So yuca is the Spanish name, and then cassava is sort of like the other name that it's known for. Yeah, so you were going to hop in actually and share with us just about your perspective of women cooking professionally in the kitchen, and how it's like a challenging space for women to be in, and especially women of color. If you do see women of color, it's always in the lower level jobs, doing a lot of the sort of prep work and, like, you know, peeling and chopping and that sort of thing. And you don't see it as much in the leadership positions. So even the fact that you have this role as, you know, a chef in like Toronto and in Florida, I can only imagine the challenges that you encountered during that space. And I'm just wondering what you had to sort of speak to those topics.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's personal stories that I can share. I'll start with a quick one from when we first opened Saturday Dinette. And I'm peeling this yuca, just so you know, on the side. I'm just peeling off that waxy part, and then I'm going to clean it up from some of this outer edge. It does not have any of the wax, but I just want to clean off any of the excess wax. So I was cooking, and I specifically remember someone had come over to the kitchen close to where I was cooking, and they just had commented how everything was delicious. And the gentleman had walked over to my husband, and he had said, and this is all from my husband telling me after, that how he loved the meal and how fabulous it was, and how, you know, he's such a dynamic chef, and how he's honored to be eating his food, and how, you know, he has such great staff and keep cooking, and, you know, more Black women in that kitchen, and just the whole 9 yards. And he basically was like, "Oh, I'm not the chef. That's my wife, and she's the chef." And the guy almost like fell back, like, "Oh, okay." And so that happened to me a lot. That still happens, you know, if I walk into the room, or if I'm in a meeting and someone hasn't met me, you know, the assumption that I might just be there as, you know, a sous chef, or I might just be a cook, just kind of listening in to take notes. But maybe I'm not a decision maker. Maybe I'm not a manager. Couldn't be in those positions. And I think it was, you know, the first experience at Saturday Dinette to then, you know, why I felt like I needed to be so outspoken in Toronto, because it was exhausting. It was exhausting to hear more stories, you know, from like yourself, Maxine, that we work in something that we love, and that we don't always get the opportunity to run a kitchen. We don't get the opportunity to be in the butcher department. We don't get the opportunity to be the lead on the line, you know, and there's this assumption that we are only, good by doing prep work, and we're only good at doing pastry. I mean, it's one thing to be a woman in the kitchen, but now add, this incredible gift of being a woman of color, it has always been a challenge. And I think we are starting to push back, and we are commanding our own kitchens. We are running our own, I've been in the industry cooking 15 years. Maxine, 22 years, you said, yeah? Yeah.
22 years.
Yeah, 22 years, that's extraordinary, I feel like I hear the stories from so many chefs that are like, by 15, by 20, they're like, I'm done. But you keep at it, and you're also found your voice in another way. I think it's, being a woman in the kitchen and being in the position that I'm in, I've also recognized that I have a bigger role than just to be in the kitchen cooking, that the voice and the conversations in these moments like this, having these conversations are so much more important. They're so necessary, and we need to be having more of these. We need to be sharing our story. We need to be sharing about how we have been running kitchens and what we are doing, and how important our food stories are, because we've been doing them and we've been making the food and we know it. And we're also inspiring the next generation, like the young person that's on with us now, that's 11 years old, that wants to own a restaurant. And how exciting that is to, see that, and to, vision that, and to dream that, and now to bring that to life at some point in some stage in your life. I am a firm believer that we are the heads of the kitchens. We are the matriarchs of the kitchen. We are the matriarchs of traditions and culture. We are what brings the table together. We are the glue. We are the sauté. We are the mirepoix. We are the almost bush. We are what make food really come aligned and make sense, and why our food is so important. And we tell our stories, and we have to just continue to tell our stories, because truly, like, who's going to do it? I want our daughters, I want our sons, I want our sisters and brothers, I want our non-conforming, I want all those to be able to feel and to understand why creation, whether it's in the kitchen or whether it's on a palette or an easel, wherever your creation is, to be able to be yourself in that space is what allows you to come alive.
Yeah.
Feel like it took me a long time to own and to embrace my kitchen, because I always felt, I second guessed myself, like, like, is this the right space for me? What do I got to do? How do I carve out more space?
Yeah.
And eventually, over time, I let that go. I let it go. I let it go. I let it go. And I recognized that it wasn't about that. It was about just believing and creating community, and having allies in the kitchen, and having, support, whether it's in the kitchen or at home, and sharing your story, talking about when you feel like you're not being heard and not being quiet, and if you are being muted, find someone to help you amplify your voice. And if you need to amplify your own voice, do it by any means necessary.
No, and for sure, like, but those are really great words. And I know, like, with those core values and beliefs, I see that you've taken that into your leadership style when it comes to working in the kitchen. So I'm just curious to understand, like, what kind of methods have you put into place in order to avoid some of the challenges that generally you find in the kitchen? What measures have you put in place to kind of like combat that?
Yeah, so just so you guys know what I'm doing right now is I'm grating the yuca. So I've completely peeled off all the waxy tuberous outer skin, and now I'm left with this beautiful white flesh. It's very, very tough. It's almost feels like a starchy potato, but it's got this beautiful smell. It's very raw, but what we're gonna do is we're gonna grate it, and then we're going to squeeze off all the excess liquid. This is a laborious job. So when I think about my ancestors and when they first were making this and why they were making this, it was delicious and beautiful. And
and so caring and loving, but it was also like, you got to put your back into it. And when flour was into, and then that generation, it kind of like this process of making it kind of dissipated, and it evolved to something else. And it's sad that, you know, we forget certain traditions, but it's even more powerful when we can bring them back and we can talk about them, because I think that's the connecting dot that we need to hear, is why are we doing this and why did we stop doing this? But understanding that I'm grading hard. They didn't have a box grader. They probably just had like a blade, and they were just going, and they were using their arm strength. They were up in the mountains. They were doing this, creating this amazing dish, and people are killing themselves for gluten-free options. And this is all you need. This with a little bit of salt and a little bit of love, and you've got a beautiful, perfect accompaniment to our Ackee and Saltfish. So
yes. So Suzanne, I know you have some prepped. I'm just looking at our time. So we have like 20 minutes, and we definitely want to get in there. And I appreciate you going through this process, because it is a process. And like, yeah, like just doing that gratering. My dad makes a traditional dessert from Barbados called coconut bread. And
yes.
He used to, up until I would say maybe a couple of years ago, and he's like 77. So up until a handful of years ago, he would get the fresh coconuts from the store. He would break them open with his hammer, peel it, and then hand grate it for every single one of his coconut bread. He would do that. And only because the coconuts have been like kind of hit or miss, that he kind of like cut out that process. But yeah, like a champ, like in there grating. He goes through graters like you wouldn't believe. So I appreciate the labor that you have put into making this.
I have, you know, and I appreciate, and as I was making it, I thought a lot about my, you know, I think a lot about who, you know, who's done this before me. And this isn't, we're not doing anything, we're not making anything new. These aren't new creations, these aren't new recipes. These are inspired recipes, and these are reimaginations of something that has traditionally been, you know, brought to, you know, Jamaica, and was something that we found a way to essentially make a delicious something from a tuberous root, you know, eating off the land, eating from the land, and eating because it has so much nutrients, and it has value, and it has flavor. So I graded already for you guys, and add a little bit of flavoring. So I added some nutmeg, and I added some salt, and I added some fresh thyme. I added these ingredients, which is not the traditional way. You traditionally just have salt. I added these ingredients because I'm thinking about, you know, when I'm cooking, I'm always creating in the moment. And I love the warm spice of what nutmeg brings. And it's very earthy. And because part of the process of making Bammy is you fry it on both sides for about, you know, depending on how thick you make it, anywhere from between 5 to 10 minutes. And then you remove it, and then you slide it into a bowl of coconut milk. And so the reason why you're putting it in the coconut milk is to give it that that softness. It's super crispy when it comes out of the pan, obviously, and you can eat it like that. It's delicious. But if you really want to experience the completion and the real essence of what Bammy is about, you slide it into the coconut milk. So I have that here. And what I infuse the coconut milk with a piece of Scotch bonnet and some more thyme. And that's really just to really always thinking about your base ingredient and how you can continue to build from flavor from the ground up. That's always how I think when I'm cooking, and that's always how I think when I'm doing anything with intention, like whether it's cooking or if I'm thinking about writing an article or something. It's about thinking from the base up, and how do I have everything there that I want the person to taste and to experience. So we've got the grated, and then we've put it into, after it's been fried, we put it into the coconut milk, and then we're ended up with complete out the fryer. I know, it's like magic, right?
The magic of TV.
Up with these beautiful little wheels. I made these a little bit smaller than you traditionally would make them, but I thought that they were really easy to make. If you make sure you dry them on some paper towel, because you are frying them. Not really a shallow fry, but kind of like a pan fry. So not too much oil. And if you need to add a little bit more, I like cooking it in my cast iron if you have it, because it's a great conductor for heat.
and it'll nice even brown on after it's come out of the coconut milk. It sits in the coconut milk from anywhere between 5 to 10 minutes, again, based on how thick and how big a bammy you have. And so I put mine in there for about 5 minutes, and then I'm left with this really kind of chewy. It reminds me a little bit of tapioca. You know, it's kind of chewy. It's got the sweetness from the coconut. It's got the essence of the thyme, the saltiness. This with the fish, this with the ackee. It's just, we've just landed. We landed exactly where we needed to be.
So just run me through this. So once you have it grated, and then you squeeze out all the liquid, and then you just dropping it into oil. Like if anyone's ever made latkes before, it's similar to that.
Exactly. That's wonderful, because even like when thinking about certain dishes and like how I can't relate to that, I've never made it before, but that's a great example. Latkes or roasties are perfect little fry vessels that are basically a cold pan with your oil, bringing it up to temperature. Then you're adding in your ingredients directly to the pan. When you're adding it to that oily pan, be careful. You want to make sure you flatten it out evenly. The whole point of bammy is that you want it to evenly cook. So if you're placing it into the pan, into like a circular or puck form, you want to make sure you can use the back of a spoon and you can flatten it out. This is a great tech tool to always have in kitchens. I think most chefs, like in our sleeve jackets, we usually have a spoon, because it's not just for tasting, but also in the event that you're like, I need to clean it, let me get another spoon, and you're just using it as a finishing, you're using it to plate. So your spoon will allow you to get that flat surface, and then your spatula will allow you to flip it gradually over, and you can use your spoon to help you flip it over. You want to lightly brown it on one side and then lightly brown it on the other side, and then remove that, let it cool for a second, and then right into that coconut milk.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And you said it has a consistency of tapioca. So tapioca is actually cassava starch, right? So, when I made the comment that, yeah, like tapioca and bubble tea balls. So she made that comment. And
Yeah.
just to read a couple of comments here, Suzanne, folks are really inspired by your words of wisdom for women and just in your really poignant way of articulating sort of like our space and our responsibility and, how we should navigate in these spaces. Like you said, oftentimes, like, especially being women of color, like we don't get acclimates, like we don't get, like our successes and our accomplishment are not even acknowledged. And so it's really easy to get lost in, and you mentioned it yourself, just that self-doubt and that questioning, am I actually good at what I'm doing?
Yeah.
Am I like, am I holding court with everybody else? And because you'll never get it. You might get positions, but then even like the prestige of the position sort of kind of like diminishes when you're in that space, as opposed to if somebody else is in that space. So it's really important, like, to kind of recognize your ability and to not kind of like internalize and take on these things. Like you said, 15 years and chefs are ready, like we're done. I bowed out. I said, you know what? I'm going to step away from sort of like the food industry. And then I found myself at this amazing organization where I get to work with people every day, talk about food and share our love for food and culture, and get to spend time with awesome people like you. So it's a really great transition that way.
It's been the last 3 years, I would say, I've started to look outside of just feeling like, okay, do we open restaurants because if it's an ego thing? Do we want to be seen? Do we want to be known? Or is it because we really deep-hearted think that we're doing something that's extraordinarily different than somebody else? And I think it's a combination of all of that. And I think that, in this time, I've had the honor to, have incredible conversations with chefs like Bashir Mounier, who you've had on the series here. He's someone that I, refer to as not just, a friend, but also a bit of a mentor, and also, a soul brother. Like, he's someone that, we've had long conversations about, how our food and how being in the, the culinary schools and what that background relationship means for us in the future, because I did go to culinary school. And with the many cooks that have never stepped foot or considered, maybe it's a financial, maybe it's just a desire to not go, whatever your reason is, but understanding that going to culinary school doesn't make you a better cook, doesn't make you a better person that's going to see the opportunities come left, right, and center. If you're committed and driven by the work that happens in these kitchens and in these spaces, then you'll be committed, and all of the opportunities will come as they should, because you are, you're driven, and you're really emotionally motivated by what you feel and what you do. It doesn't always come in this lifetime. It doesn't always come in the day that you need it to show up. But I think it's really about, I said it before, it's about finding that community connection, finding your like-minded peers, finding people like yourself, Maxine, that have been championing, for not just women, but women of color, not just, women of color, but folks of color, not just folks of color, but folks in these spaces, and taking yourself and knowing that you have so much to add to the conversation, that you can bring to the table, that how this impact is, and how important it is. These are the moments that I think we're going to see, and we're going to hear more of how and why cooks are coming back to kitchens. We have seen a departure of staffs cooking in kitchens, not just from COVID. People are like, oh, COVID has made people not want to stay in the industry. No, people have been leaving the industry for a long time. We have been, challenged with finding, folks that actually want to do the work. And a lot of that has happened because people don't feel like they are treated fairly, that they are seen of worth, that they are more than a warm body, that they have value, they have a career path that they can actually see that's going to take care of them, that's going to give them the benefits, that's going to give them childcare support, that's going to give them the belief that they can go as far as they can imagine. And it's not just at the front door of that restaurant that they just walked out of. And I think that we have to reimagine what this industry, hospitality, is. And it has to be like a reboot. It has to look at all of the broken, cracks that have been there. And we can go as far back as why and how we still have tipping as a fundamental part of this industry. We look at where the fundamentals of how tipping came to be. And it is just, it's the backbone, it's the root of slavery. And, it's another conversation, but it's something that we have to acknowledge, that it just can't be overlooked. We can't just paint it and put some makeup on it and make it look different and say, oh, we're different now, things are different. We can't just hire the inclusive diversity person to come in and, blend over, and can't just put a black box up. We got to actually confront why, biases are so known and rooted in kitchens, why people speak the way that they do, why that people are leaving this industry. We are hungry to continue to cook and be inspired, but give us a reason to stay, give us a reason to want to be there. Mm-hmm. And a paycheck, because we all know, anyone that's worked in the kitchen, you can make 10 times more doing anything else. And you can also take yourself back to university and open up a whole nother world for yourself if education is something of interest for you, and that's a beautiful thing to consider, but it's a reality that we have to look at when we reimagine what this industry is going to be on the other side. Because we are in a real COVID world, but we have to imagine that we're not going to always be here. And who do we want to be, and where do we want to be on the other side is really, the next frontier in the work that we're doing.
Absolutely. Words of wisdom from Chef Suzanne. What? Yes, preach. Suzanne's getting ready. We need to like, she's getting ready. Absolutely. I that was amazingly well said. Suzanne, I swear we could have another hour and we wouldn't be done. But I just want to say thank you so much that you are here today for sharing these amazing recipes. Mouth is watering, belly is growling, nothing to eat, just saying. But y'all will go and eat your dinner. I'll go find something in the kitchen. Tell us, so before we hop off, what's next for you?
Yes. So I am opening a restaurant here in Miami. So if and when we can open up and you guys can jump on a plane and you feel safe to come, Florida is a bit of a show. But if you should feel so safe and wanting to come to Miami, we are opening up a restaurant called Potts, putting on the Schnitz. It's a German comfort food restaurant. Very interesting approach to German, but it makes sense. German food is like comfort food, and I do that like with my eyes closed. We have outdoor seating and indoor seating. It's going to be a really, really fun project with a whole new crew of people that I've known for a couple of years and getting to know them a lot better now. I'm also working on a little book that comes out next year.
Exciting.
It's called My Ackee Tree, and it's all about my story becoming a chef, coming from a West Indian background, growing up in the US, but having deep roots in Canada and deep roots in Jamaica. And so I look forward to that. Comes out April 2022. So, and that's with Penguin Random House. So look out for that, and look out for another season of Wall of Chefs that I'm really excited to see. We had a great time this year, and Maxine, maybe we can get busy in the kitchen. I look forward to it, doing this again with you. So just call me, let me know. I'll get my passport.
I am looking forward to that day when actually yourself, Chef Bashir, let's all get in the kitchen and let's like make some food. Like I feel like that would be a time. Lots of thank yous, Chef Suzanne. Lots of appreciation for this presentation. Lots of folks just expressing how much they enjoyed it. You wanted, yeah, like this lady. There was a small group today. But she took us to church, folks. She took us to church. There was some preaching. There was the church picnic at the end. There was all kinds of wonderful things. You can follow her on Instagram. You can follow her on Facebook. It's Chef Suzanne. No.
Yeah, on Facebook. Yep. Instagram is Suzanne Barr Food. And then .com. Trying to keep it all the same. You can always find food.
Yes, amazing. So we can follow her there. And Wall of Chef people, we have celebrity chef in our midst right now, right here. So Wall of Chefs. So now you can be all like, we know people, like we know people. So Suzanne is people and we know her. So when she's on TV, we can just like, hey, I know her. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. If anyone has any last minute comments or anything, you can hop in. Dallin's just posting Suzanne's handles in the chat, so you can copy those down and just follow along with what you're doing. And I can't wait for my cookbook.
Yes. Oh, you've got one. And we're gonna go to Jamaica to do a big dinner, and my dad and I are going to hand make 100 copies. It's a whole thing. I'm very excited. Next year is going to be an amazing year. I really look forward to it. And I can't wait to see you guys. We'll do this again, but we want to do it in person, hopefully. Yeah.
Yes, for sure. All right, folks. Enjoy the rest of your evening, everybody. Thank you again to Suzanne for being here. Thank you for Dallin for assisting, and thank you for the folks who were able to join. This is going to be on YouTube, so share. everyone, because I know there's a lot more people who wanted to attend, and fortunately, because we can actually leave our houses now, some people thought that that was a good idea, that they can leave their house. So we'll share, so lots of people can get to experience this wonderful time that we've had with you today. And I just want to say thanks again for being here and for sharing about yourself, about your experiences, about your culture, your views, your vision, and your plans for the future.
Thank you, Maxine. Thank you for trusting, you know, and creating these spaces for us to come as cooks, as folks that just, you know, we do what we love, but we do it because we want to do it with people that are as committed and love it as much as we do. So thank you. And thank you, Dylan, for being here and making sure we were all in order and playing my song, Umi Says. Have a beautiful night. Thank you, Son. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
All right. Thanks. Okay, you can play us out, Dallin, as we groove. He's going to put it on. We'll just do a little, I always have a little dance at the end.